Austerity measures such as tax increases and spending cuts that are intended to fix broken budgets around the world have caused anger and outright revolt among taxpayers. Accounting expert Michael Lizza says governments need to be more transparent in the way they spend taxpayer money if those governments are serious about financial reform.
I think one of the dangers of the crisis is that we've gone back very quickly throughout the world to business as usual. And we haven't yet adjusted for some of the excesses that we saw in the crisis. We haven't made adjustments to our governance systems around the world, and there are issues around transparency.
Lizza says greater transparency and scrutiny can help to justify government spending cuts and budget reform.
Because what's happened, of course, is that the balance sheets of governments around the world have absolutely ballooned during the crisis. But what we don't yet have as the public is a clear view of how all governments around the world operate and what their liabilities are.
Nor do they truly know where all of the revenue is. Economist Dev Carr at Global Financial Integrity says there are widespread so-called fiscal termites that eat away at revenue that should be available for governments. He says corporations, financial firms, and the rich all might hide their money with complicated tax laws and loopholes, sheltering billions of dollars that should become tax revenues. He says these financial termites in what he calls dark places put more pressure on governments to cover the rising cost of retirement, health care, and other important expenditures.
The proliferation of dark places can be illustrated by these offshore centers and tax havens. These are the dark spaces for all these fiscal regulators. The average Joe Bloke sees that the large multinational corporations, the high net worth individuals, are basically not paying their fair share of taxes.
Drop the debt!
Hidden revenues only exacerbate the problems countries face when trying to get their fiscal house in order. Yes, countries need to control their debt, but not all debt is the same. Dev Carr says Greece spent money on non-investment expenses, such as retirement benefits and a huge government payroll, and misled creditors with its bookkeeping methods.
Another country at the same debt level could have invested that debt in productive investments like infrastructure, education, and research and development.
Economist Gary Burtless says a country's debt obligations can be rescued by periods of high productivity.
At the end of World War II, the United States debt was about 120% of our national income. And I don't think we then had any period in our history from 1945 to 1970. I don't think we had any other quarter century of peacetime in which the economy grew so well and delivered such a high standard of living to such a broad cross-section of its population.
As for the outcry in some countries over raising the retirement age, Burtless says people are overreacting.
It is not very large. When you think of how much our great-grandparents worked in much worse health and in many more physically demanding jobs, then I think you recognize that this is not going to be the end of the world if we all have to work an extra year or year and a half.
Perhaps the success of austerity measures and debt control might be more effective and accepted if governments were to become more transparent and willing to be more open with the taxpayers who foot the bill. I'm Alexiou, VOA News.